So thanks so much for joining us today. As I was telling a couple folks who were on a little bit early, what we're going to see today is about 95, 96% of the way there. Our developers are still just finishing up some final touches. We're going over some items for them to finish up before we roll it out to you guys. But what you're going to see today is all the features, all the functionality. It looks pretty great. We're really excited. I know it's going to speak to a lot of things you guys have been asking for. But to that end, if you have any questions, for sure let me know. And if you want to go over this again privately just before you panel again, perfectly understandable. Just shoot me an email and we'll do a private training. All right. So what we're looking at here is just a little diagram of how easy it's going to be to prep our panels in the new system. So it's going to be kind of a 5-step process across 3 different areas of Go Smart. So first thing is you're going to create your panelists just like you do now in the user editor. And we'll take a peek at that because that's going to change just a little bit. You're not going to assign in the user editor anymore. You're just creating. And then you'll use our brand new Panels tab to configure your panels, to set up your panel scoring, which includes criteria and instruction, ending with assigning your panelists there. And then you'll go to your Grants Manager, where you'll now have a new column to assign your applicants to your shiny new panels. So I just wanted to walk you through that, but we'll, of course, go through every little piece. But just wanted to give you a sense of what we're gonna be seeing today. We are on the admin side, and as I said, the first thing you'll do is still create your panelists, just like you did in the past. You'll come to Administration, User Editor, Add New User. You'll still have all the same functionality up here. You'll choose Panelists, and then you'll note that no longer is that lengthy list of your cycles available. So what you're doing here is you'll add their first and last name, username, password, set them as a panelist, disregard the section access because that is still just for grant admin, include an active email, and then add them to the system. All right? And then the first big change is what this Panels tab is now going to look like. Rather than being just that passive bird's eye view where you sort of see incoming scores, now it's going to be this active tab where you go to actually create your panels. So like all the other tabs, you're going to select the program and cycle that you're going to work on. And then you'll be met, if it's the first time you're making a panel, you'll be met with just this Create New Panel button. So you'll go ahead and click that, and then you'll see those 3 middle steps that I was talking about, where you configure your panel, you set up your panel scoring and criteria, and then you assign your panelists. So within Configure Panel, you're going to give your panel a name, and we suggest that this be sort of a category, budget number, whatever it is that you need to use to designate your panel, but do not include the name of the cycle and the word panel because this indicates that that already gets appended to the thing. So if you're doing it by, let's say, discipline, you might want to call this dance and just leave it at that. And then your panelists will see dance-community support 2017 panel. Then the next piece is whether or not you want to give your panelists the opportunity to generate their own panel book. So from their panel dashboard, if you turn this on, they will have a button that says Download Panel Book. And that will basically generate with all of the applicants that you will later assign to that panel. So then you put it in their hands to generate that. Now you can still absolutely go to your report panel, generate one, and send it out if your folks work entirely offline and they wouldn't even see their panel portal. But this just gives them the opportunity to create that piece as well. Then the second thing you can turn off or on is this general comment. And what that means is that perhaps you want to give them an opportunity to add a comment that is not associated with a score or a criteria. So maybe you're asking for like a general comment that sort of encompasses their feelings overall. So turning this on just adds an additional field to their comment area. And again, you'll see what that looks like in just a second. Then the next piece you can control is the default sort. You can either choose application number or name. You can make this choice, but the panel is still on their portal, has the ability to sort in whatever ways they find the most valuable. So they'll be able to sort kind of like you do on the Grant Manager dashboard. They'll still be able to sort by name, application number, organization name if there is one, scored status. So you can set this as a default, but again, they really have the opportunity to set it how they see fit. And then the last piece you'll do from this table, or I'm sorry, from this tab, is designate your overall instructions. So this is going to show up on the first sort of landing page for the whole panel, where your panelists will see the entire list of applicants to score. So this might be something a little more broad, like your expectations in general. This is not where you create your criteria instructions, but maybe instructions on how to use the system, if you think it's people who've been in the system the first time. Maybe just something like, hey, as you're looking through these applications, be aware that we're meeting in 2 weeks, so jot down these notes, or whatever it is, obviously, that's valuable for you. So you'll set those instructions up. Then you'll save your configuration, and then you'll be taken to the second sub-tab, panel scoring, and this is where you're going to create your individual criteria. So maybe we have something like community spirit, and then here is where you would say, while you're reviewing this application, please keep in mind how valuable is this project to our community. Or again, whatever language is valuable for you. Then you'll set a max score for that specific criteria. So maybe we're going to have 2 criteria and we want our total score to be 100. This isn't as important maybe as our other criteria, so we'll set this to 40. You're going to add it and you'll see it populate down below. And then we're going to add our second, which might be overall value. And then we want this weighted at 60%. So we'll put in 60, add it, and then you'll see as we start adding our criteria, we'll also see our total score. So this is going to be the whole range of scores that your panelists can choose, but within each criteria, they'll only be able to choose 0 to the max to whatever number you set this. So this will be able to be scored 0 to 40. This will be scored 0 to 60. You can create these in any order you want and then drag and drop and move them around as you see fit. Once you get them in the right order and once you have all the criteria you want, you can click this Save Criteria Order. If you've worked on a criteria and you need to fix something, you can come to this Edit and you'll see it populate back up here again, and at that point you can make your changes, save. Your list of saved criteria will regenerate, and then again you can save your criteria order. You can, of course, also delete criteria, but only if panelists have not yet scored. There are some things that once a panelist accesses that panel, you will not be able to undo. Other items you will be able to modify after that fact. But you obviously, you want to get in the best habit of making sure that your panels are ready to go before you invite panelists in to score. So now we've got our criteria set up the way we want. We'll click that Save Criteria Order, and then we're set to our Assign Panelist sub-tab. And from here, this talks to our user editor where we've created our panelists, and you can start to just type in your panelist name. I only have my single panelist in here since this is our test account, but if I had multiple people with J, E, they'd show up down below as well. And you'll click it, and then you'll see this person gets moved over to selected panelists. And again, if you move somebody over here on accident, you can always remove them, and they get taken away from the list. All right. After you finish that third step, you'll be kicked back here to this master panel page, and you'll see that your dance panel has these 3 steps completed, and that's indicated by this green checkbox. If you start a panel, and you should leave it in the middle of creating things, then you'd come back and you'd see some items designated as incomplete by this yellow exclamation point. And that just means that this panel is not ready for you to assign applicants, nor can panelists view it. And that makes sense because we don't have panelists assigned. But let's say we assigned panelists and configured our panel, but we didn't have criteria, we still couldn't allow our panelists into that panel until we finished all 3 of these pieces. But as you saw, I just sort of started working on that configure panel, walked away. It gets saved, and you could leave this screen, you know, indefinitely, and then come back and pick up the second or third item whenever you have time. All right, any questions there before we move over to where you assign applicants?
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
For the majority of our panels, we have the panelists review online, but then we score in person.
Uh-huh.
So is there a way to not do the scoring criteria step, or to?
You can't skip this step. You'd have to add sort of one singular criteria and perhaps, you know, call it like dummy criteria.
Okay. All right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. All right, so now we've finished our Dance Community Support 2017 panel, and we're ready to assign our applicants to it. We're going to head to our grant manager, and you'll see that looks very much the same, but now we've got this new panel column over here. And if you use those category sort select items, they'll still show up over here as well, but then the final column will be that panel column. Much like you experience now, only applicants in the receive status can really participate in the panel. So if we've got our folks in received, we can then pull from our created panels, and if we'd finished theater or we had additional items, they would be here, and then you could assign your applicants this way. If you have somebody, let's say, in progress, what you're going to see is a drop-down that you cannot access. So everybody that needs to be assigned needs to be in received, and then you'll be able to assign them to the appropriate panel. And just like you do with statuses, you'll change those panel assignments, you'll update at the bottom, and then your assigning is complete. All right. One other thing to note, if I had assigned this person to dance, and I invited the panelists to come in, and the panelists scores this person, and then a week later I say, oh, you know, this person really should be in theater. I can come in, I can change them to theater, but I'm going to get a notification that they've already been scored, and if I make that change, that score will be deleted indefinitely. So you can make those changes, but you're going to get error notifications that scores might be lost. But anytime something like that's going to happen, there should be a really good error message so you know what's going on. All right, any questions there before we hop on to the panelist side? Great. So now we're on the panelist portal, and you'll see, again, it looks pretty similar to what they've got going on now, but instead of that list of hyperlinked cycles, they'll see a drop-down with all of the items they have available to them. And these are two panels that I made this morning, which is why we're not seeing dance. But what they'll see is they'll choose the panel you've assigned them. Maybe they just have one, maybe they have 10. They'll choose that panel, and then they'll see right away their sort of what I call like the landing page for that panel. So this is the area where that master instruction is going to go from the configure panel subtab on your admin side. When you create that instructional text there, this is where that's going to show up. By default, as I said, the name you give it is going to show up here, and then this is hard-coded in to include the name of the cycle and the word panel, and then the number of applicants that are in that panel. If you've given them the opportunity to download their own panel book, that's where that button is going to show up. And then the rest of the items obviously have to do with scoring. So you can get into an applicant and begin scoring two different ways. You can click this Score Applicant button, and that'll just take you to the first applicant listed here. And then you'll be able to arrow right to go through all of the applicants, or you can obviously just come down and click one of these two. And then, as I said, you'll be able to set the default of how these are sorted to begin with, but then your panelist will have the ability to sort in their own way. All right, so let's say that we're going to score from the beginning. We're going to come in, and we were told by our developers that on the stage that's loading a little bit slower than it will on live. But right when they come in, they'll see the name of the applicant that they're working on. Then they'll see these three subtabs. The first of which will be the application, where they'll still view that PDF just like they do now, but now it's all on sort of one concise page. So they'll look through the application, they'll be able to look through the support material, and much like they do now, they'll be able to sort of view in a window like this where they can arrow left to right. They won't have to download anything. PDFs will show up like this. And then as you saw, videos and audio will play automatically, and then images show up on the screen. The system will still allow Word docs and Excel docs, and you can certainly view those, but those will need to be downloaded just by virtue of the type of a file that it is. There's no way to view it right on screen here. So those are all the items that would be included on like a work sample select page. And this window also includes items that are uploaded via that upload file field on a custom narrative page. So unlike now, your panelists sort of have to look in two different places for all the uploads. Now they'll be able to see support material through that work sample select page, and then any of those uploads all in this same window. All right, so they'll view the application, they'll view the support material, and then they'll get to their scorecard where they will see the criteria that you created. Every application will include this I have a conflict of interest with the applicant option. Then your criteria, as you created it, will show up really neatly from top to bottom. So we've got our first criteria and the 40 maximum points. They can either type in their score or use the slider. Then they can enter comments specific to that criteria. Move to the second criteria, do the same thing, and then again, if you have turned on that general comments option, they'll see this final box here for just sort of overall comments. Then they'll save, and then they can arrow to the next applicant, and then you'll see the applicant's name has changed here. And again, they can view the application, the support material, and the scorecard. And they can arrow through if they want to do it all in one session, or they can return to that home page, and then they can see who's scored and who's not. And let's say they do this in a couple sessions, they can sort by scored, and then get a chunk of all of their scored folks together and know who's left and who they have to complete. All right, any questions there?
Yeah, I have a question. As far as the panelists, and maybe you're going to cover this, but the panelists being able to use their notes in a live panel session, are we as administrators able to download those notes for them, or would they just have to access them through this panel interface during the meeting?
Either is an option. So yeah, that's what I was going to get to. Whenever we're done with questions on this, I'll show you what the report looks like. And that gathers all of those comments. So if they're using those comment sections actively while they're just reviewing and not yet scoring, or even if they are scoring at the same time, you can certainly create a master report that looks incredible that includes all of those comments in a really succinct way. So we'll peek at that in just a sec, unless nobody has any more questions about the panel portal.
Jessica, where was the arrow so they could advance to the next applicant set?
Yeah, so once they're in here, they've got previous applicant and next applicant.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Anything else?
One more question. The comments and scores that are inputted on this in this part of the interface, they are not available to be seen by the applicant at any time, correct?
Correct. These are, yes, absolutely. These are private to the individual panelists, so panelists can't see each other's, and then they're available to you as the admin, but that's it. Anything else?
No.
Great. All right. So I will show you then this report that we were talking about. You will generate it very much the same way you always have. You'll go to your reports tab, panelist report. You'll select your program and cycle, and now you'll have the opportunity to select even your panel. And then you'll select most likely received, and then build that report. And I'm going to show you one that I downloaded earlier, just because there's a little bit more data. So this is an example of Tor West, who's one of the West staff programs. So when you download your report, now you get this really robust Excel spreadsheet, or I'm in OpenOffice if you don't have Excel, and it's going to have 3 tabs and then a final blank sheet if you want to add anything else. But the first tab is going to be your cover, and that's going to show you what cycle are we working with and panel, and then who created it and when, the cycle name. It's going to list the headings of all of our criteria. So when you're creating that criteria, let me show you. Remember that you're able to sort of designate a heading for it before you give it that informational instruction. So this header, this criteria name, so all of those headers are going to show up here. So you'll see a list of your criteria. You'll see a list of your maximum score. And again, remember, this is not the one that we just made. You'll see a list of all of your panelists, the number of applicants. And then if you want to pull this after you've even funded, it's a good way to get total awarded amounts for everybody. But I know that's probably not a number that's going to be included right after your folks' panel. Then the second tab is going to be an overview, so you can get just a quick glance of everybody's average score and then each panelist's score. And then you'll note if there are panelists who have not scored, you get this automatic unscored label versus a 0. And then if you want to see the greater detail, like those comments, like the criteria scores broken up, you'll use this third and more comprehensive tab where you're going to see each applicant, and then each criteria, each comment area, and then their average score as well. And we've broken this up by color blocking as well. So this is one applicant done by 3 panelists, the second applicant scored by these 3 panelists, third applicant, and so on. So it's a really easy way to get that very succinct information. Now again, this is, I wanted to pull a report that wasn't too full, so we pulled from our incomplete folks. So a lot of this was just sort of test commenting. So yours would be a lot more robust than this. You'd have all of your criteria listed in each box, and then you'd have your colon, and then that panelist comment would follow here. So hopefully that speaks to your question about whether or not you'd have those comments available if you were paneling in person. All right, any questions on the report? Great. Well, those are the 3 main pieces of the new panel process. We're really excited about it. I hope that you guys feel like it's going to answer a lot of your needs.
Jessica, would there also be a panelist tutorial available?
Sure, yeah, absolutely. We're going to make that in the next week or 2. I was trying to hold out till things were ready so that I'm not including anything that might look a little different. Within a week of this being fully released, I'll make sure to have that for you guys.
Perfect, thank you.
Yeah. All right. Anything else? No. Okay. Great. Well, thanks everyone for taking the time. And as I said, if you have any other questions, as with anything, of course, feel free to email me directly. And if you're not paneling for months and you'll need a refresher, feel free to reach out then as well, and we can absolutely go over it again. But hopefully you'll find that this piece is a little bit more intuitive, as is everything that we're trying to create moving forward. So hopefully you'll feel like you don't need my assistance, but I'm always here if you do.
All right, perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, you're so welcome. Take care, everyone.